Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to kick off now. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce you to a friend and a distinguished professional in the realm of marketing, Alita Rodriguez. With over a decade of robust experience, Alita has mastered the art of marketing across both traditional and digital platforms, particularly within the dynamics of the MENA region. Her expertise spans an impressive array of industries from telecom, FMCG, baby, beauty care, and notably e-commerce. Alita's strategic approach and innovative methods have fueled growth and success for a diverse range of businesses and brands. Also, it's her way. From agile startups to multinational corporations, she's done it all. Today, Alita, as my dear friend and as a successful marketer, is here to share knowledge from her own experience in e-commerce. And over the past 7 years, she has done phenomenally well in that space. She will help us with understanding more about the channels and not just to meet, but exceed business objectives. Please join me in welcoming a visionary leader, my dear friend, and one of the first founders of It's Her Way, Alita Rodriguez. Over to you, Alita.
Hi, Armin. Thanks for that really warm welcome. I think it's always a pleasure to be back. Every time you reach out to me, I'm just like, yes, why not? I don't think I will ever leave this brand. So here I am. And hi to everybody who's attending and who's going to watch this in a bit. I just hope this piece is educational, informational for you. I think as we understand sales funnel, it can be a bit of a complicated subject. It can be a bit scary. It can be a bit daunting. And you may be at different journeys in your businesses. So I've tried to keep it very generic at this point because I just want you to understand the fundamental concepts of sales funnel, the conversion, and how do you optimize it for your particular brand or service in this case. And the whole idea is, how do you look at tweaking it and taking baby steps towards working at a bigger goal, right? So I'm just going to start with it. I'm just going to present my screen. Is this visible to everybody?
Yes, it is.
All right, so we're going to start from here. And yeah, the topic for today is the sales funnel and conversion optimization, right? Like Armin said, just a quick introduction. I'm no outsider to It's Her Way. I've always been a part of all of It's Her Way programs. I champion the cause internally, and I really support what Armin does, and she does great things for women in business. And if I can just play a part, even if it's a small part, in this case, to the bigger scheme of things, it's always been a pleasure. And like I said, I always keep coming back to It's Her Way because it's always been at the heart. And here we are. So without further ado, I'd like to just move on to the topic in question. And I believe many of you have seen versions of this chart or, similar versions of this chart. They are different layered approaches, but I think what is important for me is to talk to you about how conversion funnels are basically the fundamental concepts in sales, right? So you talk to any business owner and then you would have probably or potentially heard of bottom of the funnel, top of the funnel, lower end of the funnel. You would have probably heard, people moving into awareness, interest, desires. You can have it and you can call it in any which way, but they fundamentally mean the same. It could be 3-layered, it could be 4-layered, it could be multi-layered, right? What I want to talk to you basically about is just the fundamental structure of how people come into your product or land to your services. And I think what I'd like to start off with is the awareness phase, right? So this kind of helps you prove and show you how people move through the funnel, right? Whether you're a marketer or you're leading your sales, it just kind of gives you a way to lead, to engage, and to convert the person in question into different touch points. Now, awareness is something that starts at a bigger level. So that's where you kind of go and attract. Maybe you go to a room and speak to 100 in a room full of 100 people. What then happens is probably out of that, 40 may be interested to know more about you. You've probably tickled something about them, or you've kind of created or ignited a curiosity. And that's what they want to consider about your brand. So that becomes your middle funnel. So out of the 100 people that you've spoken to, say 40 of them, have been touched by your messaging or have been touched by your intent or your product or your service in question, or it's the need of the hour. Out of that 40 people, you would probably have 10 people who convert, which by conversion, I simply mean somebody who would sign up to your service, to your product, to your newsletter, however you define conversion, right? So conversion is a metrics that could be either sales, it could be either getting somebody's contact, it could be somebody who's referred. Whatever you want to define your campaign conversion metrics can be applied as that. So very broadly put, I think this is generally also what happens in a larger part. You talk to a larger group, but by the time you come down, to a very narrow bunch of highly interested people. And it's these people that you want to make sure you nurture, you lead, and how do you make sure that you keep them in the funnel rather than let them go out into a competition funnel, right? So a little more on that when I move into my next slide. And I think what's important is, and I see a lot of people doing that, is like, if they see brand A doing ABC, you want to be doing the same without having the thought process of understanding that every customer journey is different, right? So I think one thing that I want you guys to take out from this webinar is the fact that you need to tailor your funnel to your customer. And I think it's highly imperative, firstly, to understand who are your customers, what do they do, what is their mindset, what do they seek, right? And once you understand your customer, you'll be able to tweak that journey. That's different. And I think every funnel primarily could look different for different businesses, right? So in this case, for example, I want to talk to you about, say you're a food blogger, okay, that sells cookbooks. And this is potentially how you could have two different customer journeys that end up eventually buying your cookbook, right? So you could probably have customer A, right? In this case, where they see your ad online, they click the banner, they visit your blog, they read an article, they sign up for your newsletter. You kind of give them a discount and say, hey, here's the 10% off, and you're going to get some interesting cookbooks and interesting emails, and then they purchase your cookbook, right? Similarly, you also have customer B. Now, customer B is basically somebody who goes into a bookshop, which is more offline. They kind of look for your books. It's probably on one of the bestseller rack, let's hope. And then they buy it, they make their recipes, and then they visit your blogs probably for incremental recipes or to follow you and subscribe to their newsletter, right? So in essence, both the journeys, I mean, the outcome of both is essentially the same, right? But their journeys and their touch points are different. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that you need to learn to design your funnel based on how they buy, not necessarily how you sell. I'll let that sink in. I want you guys to think about how you devise your funnel based on how they buy and not how you want to sell, right? So once you kind of know how different ways that people enter your funnel, you can figure out how you can optimize these entry points, right? And that's the way you can actually meet potential buyers and entice them to convert. And the sell is not as hard as it seems. For example, an Instagram as a channel could probably work for business A, but not necessarily work for business B. Maybe business B has more of a Gen Z crowd that works better on TikTok. Maybe they need to look at optimizing that channel. So that's something that I want you guys to think about when you're kind of crafting your funnels. And I think what is very important is the kind of different content pieces that you kind of get in terms of your funnels. So if I have to kind of look at what's on the top of the funnel, this is, like I said, this is your bigger chunk where you kind of do like a mass broad reach, right? Like a mass broadcast to reach out to many people. So you could potentially use social channels that work for you. Okay, in that, like by that I mean, if you don't have customers that are older, you may not look at Facebook. But say, for example, you were looking at products that have pretty much a boomer kind of cohort, then you would want to look at Facebook. So try to understand where your audience mix lies. It could also be, a part of your blogs. Anything that excites people would probably be that. So content that's on top of your funnel is basically what drives people to your product, or at least you excite them, right? Like I said, it's search engines, social media, blogs, ads, anything that what people see and get attracted to. Your mid funnel is basically once you've kind of stirred up that curiosity and people are like, hey, I want to know more about this brand. I mean, looks good or works for me. You kind of get them to the second part of the funnel, which is the middle of the funnel. Now, your job here is once you get those 40 people in the middle of your funnel, how do you kind of move them down? Like, how do you keep them interested in your product or service, right? So once you've got people, say, for example, on your site, is it easier for you to navigate is it easier for them to navigate on your site? Can they sign up easily on your email list? Do they exactly know what your product and service is all about without having to figure out what you do, what you sell, read tons of content about it, right? Is your pricing and is your product information up to date, right? Do you have product photos? Do you have product or service videos? Do you have reviews? Do you have an FAQ page that answers everything that I need without having to go to a chatbot? So I mean, a lot of other things that comes into this is, check your site load time, check any broken elements, broken sizes. So as a matter of fact, because I work for Namshi, it's so important for us to keep checking whether things that come on top of the site, are they broken? Are they not? Because that's when people will start to lose interest. So I think that's when you move into the middle of the funnel. And then while your customers are there and you have those 40 people in there and they've moved into the conversion bit, this is where you need to figure out what is going to move them. Have they abandoned their carts? Do you see people adding products to the wish list that, it's kind of kept in their wish list for a while? Why is it that they're not buying? Do you think an incentive would trigger it? Would like a minor nudge or a push trigger it? Um, you know, do you want to get them to sign into your newsletter? So there's a lot of things that help you to get them to convert. And like I said, once you've kind of got those 10 people converting, it's very important for you to make sure you re-engage these customers. So keep them in the loop of what's coming up. Keep them in the loop of, hey, this is something that's new, or you're having an event at a next place, or here's your new launch, or this is your new book. I think data also proves is that it's also important to retain customers to grow your business, because to keep acquiring new customers, you're going to spend 5 times more than to retain new one, right? So again, that math for a new business, it can be quite incremental, especially if you're going out there and you're like keeping on getting new clients. It could be a bit potentially expensive for you, considering the fact that, you have to kind of nurture them, get them through the funnel, and that lead time could vary for different businesses and services. And I think what I just want to spend a few moments on is something like this, which has your awareness, consideration, conversion. And this is something that you would typically see in, on Twitter or on Facebook when you want to set up your ad campaigns. And I think this is just very simple understanding to tell you what do those funnels mean, right? So reach, for example, like I said, this is where you kind of want to put your ad. You don't want people to do anything. You just want people to know about your product. You want them to know about your service. With just the right amount of curiosity, you want to reach them. That's awareness. When you look at consideration, these are the different options that you could do. You could get them to watch in detail of your video. So if you were selling a cookbook, it could just be about like, okay, this is, for example, a gluten-free cookbook, or this is a keto cookbook, or whatever your genre is. But when I move into a consideration, I could tell them why more. Why is this a better option for you to consider if you were on a keto diet, right? So consideration is where you can play in depth, where you can give them a bit more information, lead them on to say, hey, now that you're excited, I want you to lead you on. It could be if you have an app, it could be based on app installs. If you had a website, it could be on web traffic. If it's you want them to go sign a quiz, take a poll, it could be engagement. So these are different views that you can look to get them to consider. Once you know that they've moved here, you know that you can get them into conversions. When I meant conversions is get them into, take more actions on your app. So not just land on your app, but probably scroll through 3 pages or get them to make that sale. So this is fundamentally like also when you set up campaign objectives, a lot of platforms kind of also want you to go through this process. As a new brand, I would say your awareness should be like 60% of what your budget should be there. Like I think you should ideally start off with, as if for a new brand, start off with 100% on reach, and then probably a month later move into consideration with still a little bit of budget on awareness. Then when you still further get into the whole consideration phase and you see that churn happening, you then move into the conversion. So you also need to take your customer on a journey along with you. And I think I just want to conclude with something very simple. I know this can get, like I said, a bit overwhelming because there's a lot of literature out there, and I'm sure you can read more about it. But I think one of the brands that I just want to play on, and I think it was very simple, very intuitive, very crisp in its execution, is Humantra. And I'm sure many of you would have seen, these ads. It's kind of plagued everyone on social media, and for me as well. So I kept seeing a lot of these ads which just talked about, a hydration pack better than water kind of thing. So it kind of piqued my curiosity, and I said, okay, what's this product about? Which then led me on to their Instagram page. And I think at one glance, I kind of understood that, yes, this is something for people who are active, who are into sports. Probably if you're dehydrated, you don't get that water, the nutrients in your water, and you need an additional supplements. However, I wasn't convinced because I was just like, maybe this is another kind of scam which has preservatives and it has hidden sugars, and I'm not so convinced. But again, after being seen by a lot of ads and seeing, going back a lot of times to their Instagram page, I went onto their website, and I thought their website was phenomenal because I think I landed on their website, and the website kind of tells me that this is the world's best electrolyte. And I said, okay, that's quite a bold statement for a brand to make. And on scrolling down, it kind of showed me my options of flavors. So I knew that there were 3 or 4 flavors, and I said, okay, that's not bad. And further scrolling down, it kind of had everything in that. It talked about how statistically 75 people were chronically dehydrated, right? Which results in XYZ. And I said, okay, tell me more about it. And I scrolled down, and it said, these are the essential electrolytes for you, for your body to perform at an optimal best. And I said, okay, I didn't know that, but yeah, good to know that. Very visual, not too much of information. And then if you moved to the bottom of the page, it told me about how it had zero sugar, gluten, it is plant-based, it didn't have all the bad nasties that a lot of people kind of tell you. And I said, okay, that one scroll actually took me from why the product is number one to what are my options, to, why should I be using it? How is it going to benefit me? And why is it good for my body? And I said, you know what? I actually went and I made a purchase on the website because it led me to the discovery pack. And that was great because it kind of had like a trial pack for me to discover. So I didn't have to invest a lot of money. And it kind of incentivized me with a 15% off to try the discovery pack only. So if I wanted to buy a full pack, it's at a full price. But however, if I wanted to just discover the brand, and that's how they called it, it gave me a 15% off to discover 2 flavors. And yeah, here I was at the end of the funnel, a converted member for this particular brand. And I thought it was a very short, tight journey. Obviously, that journey took me probably 3 to 4 weeks to convert because I kept seeing the ads for a week and a half. And then eventually I went onto the page, and then eventually I went onto the website. And I thought that it was just a beautiful way to actually lead a person on and to convert that person with the resulting stats, which basically then brings me to the end of the presentation that, like I said, it depends on every product, every brand, every service that you offer, and your journey can be different from the journey to the brand next door. So try to understand your customers, try to understand the journey based on them, and then craft out a purchase funnel or a conversion funnel based on their journey, not based on what you want to sell. That's all, ladies. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Alita. I think I have 2 questions,
Sure.
and then we'll open the floor for everyone else. If you want to ask questions and not unmute your mics, please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and then we'll take them up. So So one of the questions I have is, yes, Humantra is an amazing example. And I think we spoke about it last time we met as well. You were really in awe of the marketing strategy that they have in place. My question would be, this is good for someone who has deep pockets, right? A brand that is starting off, how should one who is devising the brand marketing strategy or the media strategy go about doing the same things in different proportions?
I think that's a very good question, Armin. And I think it's easier said than done. A lot of the brands that I work on have deep pockets, right? But here we're talking about startups, and I feel the the ecosystem is extremely cramped. So you are looking at spending a good $300 to $500 per day, ideally, if you want to be seen, to be honest. And bulk of that budget, or I feel the entirety of that budget, should be allocated to your awareness phase, primarily because you are a startup and nobody really knows of you, right? So a lot of your money will need to be diverted, and it has to be a very dedicated practice that you consistently spend money on awareness. Now, when I said, when you spend money, it's up to the channels that work best for you. It depends on where your audience is, right? That could be an email, that could be social media, that could be blog, wherever you think you're getting that awareness best for your brand or your service. You need to be dedicated and consistent with investing that time and money. So for a startup, I would say 100% of your budget needs to go into awareness. Test that out for a month, right? See how people see what's the conversion to your website or to your app or to your product or services. From there, what I need you to do is then take a bit of that budget and say, you know what, I'm going to take, if this is my budget, I'm going to take a part of it and put it into the conversion phase, which is the mid funnel, right? So you do that and you test it out for a month. Then when you see that this bit of cohort is actually landing onto your page, you then take out a bit of this budget and you still move into it. Whereas I still want you to keep at least 30% of your budgets on awareness. So eventually, I think how you would split is you move into 100% awareness. Probably a month later, you do a 70% budget split for awareness, 30 for conversion. And then probably a month later, you look at a 60-20-20. So you're not, because you will still need to get a lot of people into your brand, into your funnel. You will still need to optimize your product, service, app, website, whatever that is. And then eventually look at how that works for you. And then you can slowly start moving that money as you go along.
That's very interesting. That is actually true for any person who's coming out there or going to market initially, because nobody knows you. So you have to get people to know you first, and that's where the awareness happens. The interest and desire kind of happens once they're well aware of you, or they're interested in knowing more about you. So that's there. You mentioned that it should be about $100 to $200. No, sorry, no, you mentioned something higher, right? 200. Yeah, $500. That's quite steep. But how would you envision doing that if somebody doesn't have that kind of budget? What would you recommend?
See, I think at some point you need to start small. I think you've been also in the media space and you know how the auction works. You do have a lot of these brands like Temu and all of these coming in with deeper pockets, right?
Yeah.
So they've kind of like disrupted the entire auctioning space. That's why you have to bid higher to be seen, right? Like it's kind of like a fight, or you could say a survival of the fittest. So what I would say is, like, I understand that not everybody has that kind of money, but definitely whatever you can put, it's a matter of being consistent with that and optimizing. And it's also a matter of optimizing your creatives. So what I also want people to do is start testing multiple creatives, see what works, where there's stickiness. So I think it'll be a bit crude to go into the market with one set of creatives and say people should know about my brand as X, but your brand can be perceived as a Y and a Z, and many other things, right? So try working on whatever budget you have, but try to maximize your options in the awareness phase and see what sticks, what resonates more with customers. How do they perceive you? Like I said, as marketers, we often go with our chest out saying that this is what we are, but the customer kind of perceives you very differently. So it's always good and humbling experience to go out with different kinds of communication and see what sticks, what resonates. Are you, a brand that's a sporty brand like your Mantra, or are you something that works from a medical point of view? Like, you kind of have to test different genres of creatives and see what sticks, and then see how you can nurture that, and maybe you find an audience that actually works in that realm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's a question someone has put in the chat. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'm just going to open the chat. So I think Reena says, please advise which market rewards earliest in lower budget, because social media today is very huge and it's difficult to find the right channel for your product. And Reena, I think I'd echo the same. I do sit with my digital teams to understand what works better. And like I said, it's a very competitive space because now everybody's on it. It's an auction-based space, so you just have to kind of fight for it. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I wouldn't be the right person to advise on your channel because it depends on what your product is, right? If your product is for a more mature audience, you will need to figure out where that is. Is that an event? Do they like to feel and touch your product in person? So then that's something that's offline. Do you find them more on Facebook rather than newer channels like Snapchat and TikTok? At the end of the day, you kind of need to feel the pulse of where your audience is based on what your product or your service is, and then figure out how do you start working slowly towards that, and then how do you optimize what works best for you. So I think it would not be fair for me to give you an entire picture without knowing what your product, what your service is, because your audience could be maybe offline, not online, and it could be probably on a Snapchat and not a TikTok and not an Instagram. So it, like I said, just figure out where your customers are and start small, but just be consistent.
Yeah, consistency is key. Consistency is key in everything that one does, especially in small businesses, because the minute you kind of lose track or change gears, there might be a chance of losing whatever you've developed till that point on. So thank you very much. I want you to say that one line that you said, which was really hard hitting, and it kind of, you told us to sink it in. I think that's a very impactful one. I'd like you to say it once again, so we have it in, so that everyone hears it again, because some people join later on, right?
Yeah. So like I was saying, this whole conversation was about how do you use conversion funnels basically to work for you. But I just want everybody to take home the fact that you need to design the funnel based on how people buy and not how you want to sell, right? Like you could be a person who wants to sell things on social, but if people like to actually feel, touch, taste, smell your product, and that's how you actually can convert them faster, then you need to rethink on how do you design that funnel, and that funnel can no longer be online but rather offline. So I'd leave you with this parting thought that design the funnel based on how your customers buy, not on how you want to sell. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alita. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're just going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we're going to set the stage up for our next speaker. And we have about 5 minutes. So we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll set it up for the next speaker. Thanks, Alita. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Armin.
Take care.
Bye.